brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord and set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of
So
bones.
Ezekiel, third longest book among all the prophets, and yet we really don't know more about him than we do most of the minor prophets that have all those short books. Very prolific writer, know very little about him. There's a few things we do know. First of all, he was taken captive in the second wave of captivity at the time that Jehoiakim, also called Jeconiah, was taken into Babylon. And that was the year that Zedekiah became king. Now, his first prophecy is written in the 5th year of Jeconiah's captivity, which he says is the 30th year, or his 30th year. A little fuzzy on what he meant by that, but it is speculated that he's saying that he was 30 years old when he had his first vision. Now, if that is true, and it was in the 5th year of Jeconiah's captivity, then we take 30, we subtract 5, because that's 25 years old when he went into captivity. 11 years before that is when Josiah died, meaning he was 13 when Josiah died. That means he was born the same year that Josiah had his great Passover and great religious reform. So this would make him that he was raised during the time of Josiah and would have been a teenager in the days of Jehoiakim. We also know that he is a priest. He is of a priestly family, and he most likely served in the temple in Jerusalem before he was taken into captivity. Now, he is given these visions out in Babylon. He wasn't in the city of Babylon. He was in a town called Nippur, Nippur. That's about 60 miles south of Babylon. So he still would have been in the district of Babylon, and therefore would have been under the political rulership of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, there is a Jewish tradition that when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were threatened with the fiery furnace, they went to Ezekiel for advice. It's possible, if they did, then that episode of the fiery furnace had to have taken place after Ezekiel was taken into captivity. I know in my timeline, I put it sometime during the reign of Jehoiakim before Ezekiel was taken into captivity. So if my timeline is right, then Ezekiel was not on hand to give advice. But I could be wrong. I was just guessing. We're not told exactly when it happened. So I find it an interesting little Jewish tradition there that Ezekiel was the one they went to for advice. Kind of curious why they wouldn't have gone to Daniel, but it's a fun little thing. Now, the last prophecy of Ezekiel is estimated to have been given around the year 570, which is about 22 years after his first prophecy. That's the span that is estimated here. Which means if he was 30 years old when he gave his first prophecy, he's 52 when he gives his last prophecy. And we just assume, or the scholars assume, that he died shortly thereafter, which is why that was his last prophecy. His death is never recorded, so we don't know. Maybe he lived to be 80 years. He just never wrote anything else down. It's an interesting thing. Ezekiel has some of the most unique and honestly weird visions and prophecies in all Scripture. Right, the first chapter we read is the weirdest chapter in the entire standard work. But we're going to have some fun with it, because nobody has any clue what this vision actually means. It's just this weird vision that he's got. So it's fun. On the last note, talking about his death, there are actually two places that claim to be the tomb of Ezekiel. There's one in Turkey, first of all, one in Turkey. I find that to be unlikely. He would have been in Babylon, would have died in Babylon most likely. So why would he die in Babylon and then be taken like 2,000 miles to the northwest to be buried in Turkey? Unlikely. But there is one in Iraq, which is ancient Babylon. Now, you had its tomb. There was a place, I honestly can't remember the name of it. It's a very complicated Babylonian name. But it was a place significant to the Jewish exiles in Babylon, and it has been significant to them since the Babylonian captivity. There has been a community of Jews living there for 2,500 years. Now, in recent years, after the Arabian conquest, 1,400 years ago, they built a mosque over the tomb of Ezekiel. They did that to a lot of the ancient prophet tombs. And in more recent years, that community of Jews, most of them have left the area due to, conflicts in the Middle East. Well, there was a synagogue there as well, and now they're planning on turning the synagogue into a mosque as well. So that's the tomb of Ezekiel. Now, I did mention one last little detail that I did forget, is that there is some speculation that Ezekiel is the son of Jeremiah. Jeremiah began prophesying in the 13th year of Josiah, 5 years before his great Passover. So 5 years before Ezekiel might have been born, if we go with that speculation. Jeremiah started prophesying 5 years before Ezekiel was born. Jeremiah was in his 20s at the time, so it is possible that Ezekiel is Jeremiah's son. Now, Ezekiel, in the book of Ezekiel, it says Ezekiel, the son of Buzi, B-U-Z-I, not the son of Jeremiah. But apparently the term Buzi means despised or hated. And so some people think that he is called Ezekiel, the son of Buzi, meaning Ezekiel, the son of the despised guy, the son of the one who is despised. Fits Jeremiah very well. Most people hated Jeremiah while he was alive. Interesting stuff. But we're going to leave that here, and we're going to be reading a lot of Ezekiel next. I think we got like 17 chapters of Ezekiel we're going to go through next. So buckle up for some weirdness.
I prophesied as I was commanded, and as I was prophesying, there was a noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together.